Is AMD stock a better buy over Nvidia right now? Today I want to take a closer look at a recent conference where AMD's management shares some insight about AMD's potential growth. I'll end the episode by sharing my thoughts and how it might compare to the AI giant Nvidia. So let's get started with today's episode.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
Today I want to take a closer look at a recent conference AMD's management was at, and that was a JPM Tech conference that happened on May 21st. And the company did share a lot of great insight, especially about their MI300X. All right, so the first thing they discussed during this conference was the MI300 plus Microsoft. So Microsoft on the week of May 21st did have their Microsoft Build conference, which they announced a really strong end-to-end partnership with Microsoft and AMD. And this was two main partnerships. This was mainly with the MI300X and their ROCm software, and they are gonna power the Microsoft's virtual machines both for the internal workload that ChatGPT with open source use, and also external workload like third-party workloads. So this is pretty interesting. So for those that were not familiar, Microsoft has their own clouding solutions that they can do various things with. So that's kind of that external third-party workload. Microsoft also has a lot of solutions internally with things like their OpenAI enterprise solution or OpenAI solutions for the open source market. And this is where MI300X is also powering up. They did mention, Microsoft mentioned actually, that the MI300X and ROCm is the best price performance to power the ChatGPT for inference. So this is something we have heard about AMD's MI300X chip that is one of the best for inferencing solutions, and that's kind of one of its powers over maybe Nvidia's H100, H200, and some of the other products out there. So we can see this nice boost of confidence for the MI300 platform. Before we go any further, we are now on the road to 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Thank you all for the crazy support. So if you haven't and are enjoying the content, make sure to hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button. Finally, if you want to support the channel a little bit more, make sure to check out my special offer at fool.com/Jose. Now back to today's episode. Now the second thing they talked about, and this is probably one market that I'm not too excited for AMD. For those that are not familiar, AMD is actually my second biggest position, only behind Nvidia at the moment. And so I've been a long time bull of AMD. I've actually been in AMD since single digits. It was probably one of my first few stocks that I purchased and one of my first few multi-baggers. And obviously AMD right now is very dependent in the CPU space, but in the CPU space, we're seeing a lot of different competitors also in the client space. But here in the server CPU, AMD mentions that in Q1 they saw strong double-digit growth year over year, and in Q2 they're expected to see a strong double-digit year-over-year growth for their server CPU. And they believe that this is driven by two things. First is just the huge ramp of their fourth family processors, which is the Genoa, the Bergamos, and all these other fourth generations, and also just the adoption of or kind of the growth in servers compared to where we were a year ago. Now they mentioned that in this market, Q1, they did have market share of roughly 33%, and they do expect the second half to be better than the first half. So overall, even though the CPU space is a little bit slow, it is better than last year, and they are gaining market share against their competitors. Now, if we take a closer look at client CPU, the CFO also mentioned some great things. They mentioned that, hey, look, at the first half, their PC client business is performing really well, and they are also gaining market share. Primarily, the main reason is their recent generation of client CPUs, the Ryzen 8000, but also in the laptop market, right? They were the first to introduce the NPU for the laptop space with the Ryzen 7040, and also the first to introduce it to the desktop market. So right now, we're seeing this push of AI PC, and AMD is definitely in the forefront of it. They mentioned the first half was better than some of the other players out there, and they expect the second half will be even better as they are releasing the next generation of AI PC with their Strix platform, which they are going to talk about it in the coming years, in the coming weeks. I also want to mention though that, hey, look, we are seeing a lot more competition here in the AI PC space, especially from players like Qualcomm, which is performing pretty well. Now, there was a question about the AI GPU and kind of the demand about it, right? We've kind of seen the MI300X originally start with, I think, $2.5 billion of guidance for the year, and now that's for more than $4 billion in revenue for this year, based on what they have qualified on backlogs or the orders at the point when they did their earnings announcement. I think every quarter from here, they're going to continue to grow, and it's going to improve, but $4 billion is really not much. It's chump change compared to how much Nvidia is making per quarter, right? They also mentioned that there's way more demand for GPUs, and their team is working very hard with customers to continue to go through those kinds of process to scale to their customers and make sure that they ramp into production. So they do have more than 4 billion supply secure, especially in the second half. So I believe right now we're probably seeing those small incrementals in revenue guidance, but maybe in the second half of this year, this can grow dramatically. I think this is the biggest bullish case for AMD right now, their MI300X, and how much they are kind of being conservative and sandbagging the guidance. Again, I wouldn't say this is the next Nvidia, but regardless, they can definitely benefit from the MI300 space. Another question came out of, hey, look, your roadmap versus Nvidia. Nvidia gave us that roadmap that, hey, look, they're changing tones on a yearly basis. What is AMD doing to stay competitive? AMD first mentions that, hey, look, they've been doing chiplet architecture for a long time, literally almost 10 years. And because of the chiplet, right, they're able to be very flexible on their roadmap. And that's one of the main reasons AMD doesn't really share too much on roadmap. They are very conservative on roadmap perspective. Because of their chiplet design, things can change really quickly. And as an investor, if they give us one form of roadmap and they kind of change it around, people are going to see it as a negative thing. But right now, with their flexibility, they have very competitive roadmap ahead, and they will kind of give us a preview in the coming weeks. So again, we're probably going to hear more about maybe the next iteration of the MI300X and maybe what's to follow the MI400X in X amount of years. So that's something that investors are definitely going to want to listen to and kind of learn more about. And you're going to learn more about it in this channel. So make sure to hit that thumbs up and the subscribe button. Now, the Chinese market. This is very important as we are seeing kind of a lot of weakness in China due to regulations. I mean, for Nvidia, this is almost a non-existing market. So what is AMD doing here? And AMD mentions that, hey, look, right now our China exposure is almost nothing. And for right now, because of their chiplet architecture, if they want to design a model or design something unique to meet expert controls, they are able to do that pretty, maybe not easily, but a lot easier than maybe some of the competitors. But right now they are prioritizing in the United States government, and those customers get the GPU supplies that they have. So there's so much demand in what we're hearing from Nvidia for AI chips that there's no reason for them to go look abroad right now. And unfortunately in China, because of all these restrictions, China is more pushing into domestic chips instead. So AMD, I think, is being smart and focusing in US customers, and then maybe after that it should focus in things like European customers, and then maybe Latin America and other countries in North America that are building that AI infrastructure. So right now, China, at least for now, is something that investors shouldn't really worry too much about. Now, there was a question on ARM-based server CPUs, and this is one thing that I feel has really kind of brought maybe a little bit of a bearish thesis for AMD, is the CPU market is becoming so filled right now. And the main reason is, unfortunately, CPUs, the evolution of CPUs and the performance of CPUs are not increasing at huge leaps. So big tech players are kind of designing their own CPUs. I mean, we have Graviton from Amazon, Cobalt from Microsoft, Axion from Google. NVIDIA's great CPU. So the question is, how is AMD seeing this ARM-based CPU from their customers, and how do they see this going in the future? So the CFO mentions that, hey, look, it's really about the performance per watt and the performance per dollar, and where you can get the best performance on total cost of ownership. And one of their biggest product right now that is from their Generation 4 family is the Bergamo, which is probably more competitive with ARM, and they're seeing significant adoption matters. So for me, AMD, when you talk to them about the MI300X, they seem very bullish in market growth opportunities there. But when you talk to them about server CPUs, especially when customers are creating their solutions, from how I read it and how I listen to it, I think AMD is a little bit less bullish in this space right now, and they just have to really continue to be competitive, because now they don't just have competition from Intel in this space, they have competition from other players as well. Now, if we take a closer look at what are the main growth drivers for AMD, in the second half, they believe the most growth driver is going to come from the data center business, mainly the GPU side, as that's where it's growing so much faster than any other business, and is going to grow margin expansion. Unfortunately, the embedded business will be is currently seeing a kind of a cyclical decline and just an overall market decline right now. But if the embedded market comes back, it will provide additional tailwind. But at the same time, they believe that the embedded business is going to be more of a gradual recovery and not a U-turn recovery. So for now, the biggest growth driver for AMD is going to be the data center business, and more than likely is expected to come from the GPU side. Now, I want to take a closer look at an PE ratio for AMD and Nvidia. This is about the next 9 months from now. Nvidia is sitting at 42, AMD sitting at 49. So we can see AMD is a little bit more expensive. Forward 1 year, they're pretty much in line, 32 to 31 at current prices right now of May 28th at around 1 p.m. For me, I have to say it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a big AI player, and if you think there's going to be the king of AI, NVIDIA is going to be my bet. I don't believe NVIDIA is going to lose the crown to anybody anytime soon. Now, I don't believe AMD will gain like NVIDIA. I don't think we're going to see the crazy revenue growth that NVIDIA saw, but it can definitely benefit from the AI space. And like we saw from here, and I mentioned it, I believe management is very, very bullish in the MI300 space, yet they're not giving us the proper guidance. Now, for me, the CPU market is still a wild card because we are seeing so much pressure in the server side from big tech giants, and even in the client side from players like Qualcomm, the ARM space, and everything else. AMD at the end of the day is still my second biggest positions, but I have no intentions of adding right now. I think there might be some other plays out there in the semiconductor space. And personally, on AMD, it's like I mentioned, number 2 biggest position already. So I'll rather hold off, but they can definitely benefit from the AI space. I just want to reiterate that I don't believe it will benefit like NVIDIA. Let me know your comments below. Take care, have a good day, and see you next time.